Okay, well, thank you for your patience. Uh, and Tori, thanks for helping to get this set up and for agreeing to hosting. I hope everybody can hear all right. I'm in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, and we're having a big storm. So I hope my connection is good enough that you can hear me okay.
You're wonderfully clear, Dicken. No problem.
It's coming through? Oh, great.
Yep.
Good, good, good. I moved in to be right next to my modem, so I hopefully we have the absolute best reception. Well, I looked down while we were waiting. I looked down through the list of everyone who is here, and really excited about people that have come today, and really appreciate your being here. Silent mind, kind heart. That's sort of a summary statement about how Natasha and I see the human potential is that when you have an understanding of what a silent mind really is, and I know Natasha has a lot of things she wants to share about that today. When you have an understanding of what the silent mind is, you begin to access that silence no matter where you are or what's going on. And the wonderful, wonderful discovery is that when we touch that space within us, it awakens feelings of connection to life and to other people. It awakens our heart. And this is the real reason I've been a psychologist for 40 years. And there is nothing I enjoy more than seeing someone wake up at their heart and feel more love and compassion. And when we do our longer seminar, I'll also have an opportunity to share with you about how it is that as you learn to touch that space within yourself, you are literally bringing more love and understanding into the world, and it's helping to raise the overall level of well-being of the world. So each of us can play a significant role in helping to create a better world, starting with right where you're sitting right at this moment. You don't have to be somewhere else or be doing something else in order to help make this a better world. That literally, anytime any of us fall into that space within and touch that beautiful, beautiful space, something transforms in consciousness. Something opens up, and it brings more love and compassion to your way of experiencing life. What I'm finding out with people that I work with is that it makes a huge difference who you think you are at your very core. Makes a huge difference. Do you think at your core who you are is your personality? That you have a certain personality and that's who you are? Do you think at core you are the collection of all the past experiences you've had and that's who you are? Do you think who you are is what you think? Do you think that's what's your essence, is the thoughts that you're having, or what you feel, or how you behave? Do you think at core you are flawed, or that there's something missing, that you have to develop your capacity to be loving and compassionate? It's one of the oldest questions that's ever been asked is, who do you think you are? Really, I mean, who do we, who do we think we are, right? I was very fortunate to meet a man named Sydney Banks, who had had a profound experience of who we are at our greatest depth. And he came back to remind all of us that who we are at our greater depth is never who you think you are. It's something far more beautiful than that. Far more beautiful than that. That at the deepest level, if you experience your true self at the deepest level, you will experience nothing but unconditional love. At the deepest level, if you experience this unconditional love, you'll notice that that experience is filled with wisdom and knowing. And when we are in touch with that dimension of ourselves, we are very loving, very compassionate, and know how to deal with anything that's going on around us in our life, even if it's a horrific circumstance. At the deepest level, you also begin to discover that you are an awareness or an experience of life free of all concepts. Unconditional awareness. Exactly the kind of awareness you had when you were first born. When you're first born, you haven't developed concepts, ideas, beliefs. And what we're finding out, what I'm finding out, what I'm seeing over and over again, is that when people's minds are free of concept, when people are really in this state of pure consciousness, awareness free of conceptual limitation, when people are in that state of mind, they have no shoulds, no judgments, no thoughts of limitation, no insecurity. That's our natural state. Fully awake, alive, present to life. So at the deepest level, we are a space of pure awareness, meditation, full of possibility. At the deepest level, we are an infinite potential for new thinking. Thinking that's helpful, that's uplifting, that's creatively responsive to whatever is going on in our life. We're a thought away from our deepest level. Do you know how different this is than what I was trained as a psychologist? The prevailing theoretical construct for human beings is one by Sigmund Freud. And he said at our deepest level, we're a seething cauldron of snakes, right? There's this dangerous energy that's sexual and aggressive, and it needs to be contained and controlled by a strong ego, right? So we're all sweet, nice people on the outside, but inside, watch out, we're wild animals waiting to break forth, right? And that the tension between a strong ego and your id, this unconscious force, is neurosis. And that the best we can hope for is to become well-adjusted neurotics. You know, there have been people in every culture throughout the world who have fallen into the depths of their being. And they all come back saying the same thing. We're full of light, we're full of love, we're full of beauty. We're pure spirit, we're pure being, we're pure awareness. We're infinite potential. People, time and time again, in every culture, there have been people that have discovered this, and then they've been the reminders. Ordinary people who just go through the world reminding you of your true nature and saying who you think you are, you're not. You're way more beautiful than you can imagine. Anything you can imagine is a pure limitation on your true self. So Natasha and I wrote a book called Coming Home. And that's just a metaphor for waking back up to and realizing your true nature. And it's a lot easier than you might suspect. And that's what we teach, that's what we talk about, that's what we remind people of. And people begin to have glimpses of when they fall out of their conceptual mind and experience how beautiful life is when we're just being ourselves as we are in the moment, free of the contamination and distortion of our personal thinking. This is why people all over the world meditate. It's why people all over the world pray. They're looking in the direction of quieting their mind down so that they can be free of the concepts that says, I can't do this, I'm no good at this, this is who I am. Any kind of idea or belief that we have about ourselves or other people that's anything short of unconditionally loving and compassionate. So anyways, that's before we got, while I was waiting to come on today's webinar and I got quiet, what occurred to me was just, it's really important what human beings think their core consists of. Is it just empty? At your deepest core, in your deepest being, is it just emptiness? Is it dark? Is it dangerous? Is it unpredictable? Is it light? Is it open? Is it free? Is it creative? Is it responsive? Is it wise? Is it loving? This makes all the difference. And I'm here to tell you after 30 years, the last 30 years of from when I first met Sydney Banks, this man who reminded me of my true nature, I'm here to tell you that we're way more beautiful in the depth of our being, way more creatively responsive, way more aware, and way more loving and wise than anything any of us can imagine. That's our true nature. We're human beings, and the being part of us is pure and beautiful and creative and responsive. It's our true nature. So let me pass it over to you, Natasha. What would you like to add to this?
Well, I was just thinking we have such a beautiful job, and we really only have one job, which is calling people home. Now, the good news is that we know that everybody is already home. So all we have to do is point in the right direction. Now, the way we do this is to look at the 3 principles that we both learned from our teacher, Sydney Banks. and to start seeing that everything that we're experiencing is coming from a thought. It's being sensed by awareness, and it's being powered by the intelligence behind life. Now, I know many of you that are listening here today already know about the three principles, but still I think it's often that we forget to speak about what they are. So I would love to just talk a little bit about them, and I know that Dicken will probably say a little bit more about it afterwards. So when I first got started looking in this direction, my first insight was about thought. It was the difference in seeing that I have a personal thinking and that there's something that's powering this thinking. There's a force behind it. There's a formless energy that allows me to think. The formless energy is completely neutral. Its only job is to have this potential of creativity, as Dicken was mentioning before. So anything possible that could be thought about, it's there. It's lying as a potential. So we as human beings can think anything. We can create misery. We can create joy, and we do. So we have this amazing power that's able to conceive any kind of idea. And whatever we conceive, we perceive. Whatever comes up, we're able to know about through consciousness. Consciousness uses our five senses to animate or make real everything that we've thought about. So as soon as a thought arises, immediately there's a sense of what it means. So there's a difference between thought, the principle of thought, and when we talk about principle, we mean that which is most foundational. It's the foundation of being human, one of the three principles. And then there's the personal thinking. Now, the more that I believe, like Dicken was just mentioning, that my thinking is who I am, or my body is who I am, and my personality is who I am, that's when I get caught. That's when I get stuck. The more I start seeing that everything that's being conceived is being conceived from this power, this formless power. And it's not until I start believing my thoughts that I get into trouble. It's as soon as I misinterpret or misunderstand who I am, that's what creates the suffering. It's when I get stuck in thinking that what my personal thinking is also who I am, or that it's true. So I have thinking, personal thinking, and it's powered from thought. There's also consciousness, which is also this formless power, which allows me to be aware. So again, there's the principle of consciousness, which is always present. It's always silent. It's the backdrop that's always there. It never changes. It never goes away. I can have my personal awareness that can be aware of what I'm thinking, for instance, or how I'm feeling, or the temperature in the room. So I have that personal awareness as well. Now, everything that we think and perceive, everything we conceive and perceive is all powered from what Sydney Banks called universal mind. We talk about it as the intelligence behind life. It not only operates everything, it's intelligently making everything alive. We're given life each moment from this huge, amazing power of mind. It's living us, it's creating life, and we don't have to do anything. It's pretty awesome that way. It's just, we're given life every single moment. That's also why we talk about it as being love. It's giving with no judgment. That which gives life doesn't judge whether it's given to somebody who ends up killing somebody or if it gives it to a saint. There's just this power of giving. So what we keep coming back to, and we'll go more into that in our seminars, is that when you go beyond your concepts, your ideas of who you are, of your past, your present, anything you can think about, when you go beyond that, there's something there. There's something there that doesn't disappear. Thoughts come and go, feelings come and go, but there's an awareness, there's a consciousness that noticing everything that arises. It's just there. Sometimes one of the sort of recent insights for me has been that when something comes up and I believe it, I was thinking of the metaphor the other day of one hand clapping. You know, there's this hand, and does it make a noise? What's the noise of one hand clapping? And I was thinking of thought as being just coming through. And if I don't identify with it, if I don't cling on to it, nothing happens. But as soon as I put belief with it, it creates a form, it creates a sound, it sticks. And now I'm experiencing the consequences of believing my thought. So going beyond who we think we are, looking towards our true nature is one of the things that I don't think we ever tire of talking about, sharing with other people. It's a constant journey that keeps evolving. And every time Dicken and I speak, you know, we'll talk about what we've seen, and it's like we don't see anything new, we just see it deeper. And it's beautiful how this is a journey that just continues. I wanted to say a little bit about silence, because that's something that I've been reflecting a lot on these past weeks up until this webinar, which is that, you know, we can all be quiet for a little bit, right? We can all try. I'll try to be quiet. You know, all the years I meditated for more than 20 years, and I was really trying to be quiet, trying to quiet my mind, and there was a lot of effort. And I tried with mantras and lots of different things to try and quiet my mind. And what I've discovered now is that behind the conceptual thinking, behind everything I think I am, all my past or my future or anything, behind that, there's an effortless silence. That which is trying to be quiet is never quiet. There's a constant babbling, there's constant chatter in the mind. Okay, be quiet. Okay, how long have I been quiet? 1 minute. Okay, try again. It's constant, and it's effort. There's a lot of effort in it. So the more that we see that we're not what we think we are, the more we rest in this space of pure consciousness that Dicken were talking about, the more we see that, or sense the silence that's always there. It doesn't go away. It's there right now, even though I'm speaking. I could be climbing a tree or going for a walk or a run. The silence will still be there. It's who we are in essence. It's this consciousness that notices everything that arises. It notices thoughts, feelings coming up, and it just stays as awareness. It doesn't judge it. It doesn't make anything of it. So I love this truth that I think everybody probably who's here tonight knows about inside themselves. There's this truth that there is a silence behind everything, that we are not who we think we are. There's something that resonates deeply in you that calls you home. Yeah. Dicken.
Had to unmute myself. We're born in that silence that can't be done, that doesn't require effort. I think many of you know that I have a 1-year-old grandson. I have 2 other grandchildren. But I spent a lot of time with my grandson when he was a little infant and baby. And he lived in that silence that comes before the noise of your own personal thinking. The voice in your head that's always talking with ideas and beliefs, shoulds, judgments. So I watch young children, and they're fully present to life without ideas about life, without ideas about themselves, especially when they're really little, right? Before they develop language. They're just experiencing life directly without any judgment. There's something that happens when a baby comes into a group of people. When people look at that baby, they see the purity and the innocence of that baby because that baby is not contaminated by any kind of beliefs of judgment. You will never feel judged by a baby. Innocence, purity, experience without any kind of manipulation, no ego, right? That's always there within us, behind the noise of our personal thinking. Which is why people have been so excited that when our personal thinking quiets down, people re-experience what it was like to live in that kind of purity and innocence. It feels good to be free of all judgments. Recently, the Dalai Lama says, love is just the absence of judgment. Take away all the judgments in a person's mind and you'll have someone who is experiencing love. If you're going for a hike in the woods, take away your personal thinking. When your personal thinking quiets down, you can't help but to experience the beauty of nature. When I'm with my wife, I've been with her 51 years. When my personal thinking gets really quiet, I experience unconditional love for her. It's like I'm seeing her for the first time. Innocence means fresh, new, like you're seeing something for the first time, right? What would it be like to look at your work as if you're seeing it for the very first time with no memory and no judgment? What would it be like to see your friends that way? What would it like to see your partner that way? What would it like to live a good part of your life in that space? That's what I'm interested in. That's what I love exploring. So I've loved learning about the principle of thought, which basically says there's a power in the universe that's invisible and formless. It's this pure energy, a force that generates mental activity inside the head of every single human being. It's always going on, or you wouldn't be a human being. You'd be dead. You'd have no mental activity. You wouldn't have a mental life. You wouldn't be a psychological being. You couldn't have any experience of any kind, right? Now it's been really just, it's very, very simply, when I realized that thought, or the power of thought, inside, which means beyond the physical, it's formless energy. The power of thought is creating whatever I'm feeling at this moment. Right? So whatever I'm thinking, I'm going to feel. And to realize that is radical. It's absolutely radical, because I've asked tens of thousands of people, what are you feeling and where do you think it comes from? And I haven't once had a single person say, well, that's obvious. It's being created from the power of thought in this moment. People will say, I'm feeling the way I do because, and they'll talk about something in the physical world that they think has the power to create feelings. A situation, a person, something that happened, your personality, your biochemistry, the weather, food, something. You can do this, try this at home. Go up to somebody who hasn't been taught the principles and ask them, what are you feeling? Where do you think it comes from? It's really interesting to hear all the different theories people have for what has the power to create feeling. Okay, so on a very practical level, when I started learning about the power of thought, I started seeing, well, if I'm feeling really anxious right now, if I'm nervous, it's not coming from my circumstance or my situation. It's being created from within by this via the power of thought. The question comes, why would I keep thinking about something if it makes me feel anxious? Why would I keep thinking about something if it keeps me feeling upset or angry? Why would I keep thinking about something that is lowering my spirits? So what I see happen as people begin to learn about the power of thought, they begin to let go of more and more of the thinking that weighs heavily on them, and they become more and more unburdened. You know what happens when you become unburdened? You become like a baby again. You come home to presence, free of concept. You get to just be yourself as you are without interference of any kind of idea or belief. In that moment, you are experiencing innocence. At that moment, you are as your being and your presence becomes as attractive as the being and presence of a little baby. People like being around people who live in that kind of presence, just like they like being in the presence of a baby. You're not worried about any kind of judgment. There's just this beautiful, innocent, pure being. And that is our nature. It's always there inside of us. It can only ever get covered over by the thinking we get caught up in and believe to be true. It's the only way. So it's wonderful learning about the power of thought, because you begin to drop more and more of the thinking you're doing that's unnecessary or unhelpful. You start to use your mind more wisely, right? Literally. We have free will, so you can either keep thinking about something or you can let it go. If you let it go, you come back to the now. You fall into what Natasha and I are talking about as pure consciousness, awareness free of personal thinking. You're just present to life. This is what everybody is looking for. Why is that? Because when you rest in that space of presence, it's a guarantee. If you just rest there without going right back into your personal thinking, guaranteed you will always start to feel better, and you'll get thinking that's helpful to you, no matter what circumstance you're in. no matter what situation you're in. It's built into us. So you wake up to the fact of thought, you discover your true innocent nature, you fall into this space of just presence. You rest in that space and you start, for no reason, you start to feel better. And when you feel better, you're able, it's filled with wisdom and knowing. Right? And you'll just know what to do. You'll just know how to deal with something. As a parent, you'll know how to deal with a kid who's misbehaving. In a relationship, you'll know how to respond to your partner when they're in a low state and caught up in their thinking and expressing their upset. You'll know how to respond to that in a kind, compassionate way. It's built into us to be that way. You'll begin to see the psychological innocence in other people. And you go, behind that gruff exterior is this beautiful, loving, present, warm, compassionate baby. Right? It's no wonder sometimes I say to my wife, hey, baby. Okay, before I get too far out there. Natasha, what do you think? We've got 10 minutes. Do we want to see if anybody is has some kind of burning question for us? I think that'd be fun if somebody does.
I just wanted to say one thing. Because I was just reflecting and going back to the silence part. I just wanted to say that, we can't keep quiet, but we can wake up to a true nature, which is silence. You already are silence. You already are grace. You already are peace. And what gets us away from that is who we think we are, who we think we are. So going beyond concepts is that which gets us back home, gets us back in presence. And from that space, that's where the kind heart arises from. That's where love and compassion for other people. There's no effort required. There's no doing. You can't do it. You can see it, and then you drop into that space. Yeah. So I'm really excited about speaking more about this. We'll have another webinar about this also in I think January, but also on the seminars in Oslo and Tunsberg. So in March. Yeah. I'd love to hear from people if there's any questions out there.
Okay, so just unmute yourself and raise your question, because there's way too many to see who's raising their hand. I think there's about 70 people. Yeah. And not everybody at once, but one at a time. That will be fine.
I have a question, if I may.
Great, yes, of course.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi.
I just had to go into another room because I have a baby, so I have to keep quiet and find the silence.
Yeah, you have a little teacher.
Oh, so much so.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Dicken, because I'm now in a relationship and I have a baby, and both of these are like not the norm for me, but I learn a lot. But sometimes I'm like overpowered by my responses. Like something in the outside physical world happen, my boyfriend says something to me, or my baby cries, and I get like overpowered. And I try to let this emotion flow through me. And I just wanted to hear, is this like a good strategy to kind of let the wave pass before I can fall into the silence? Or is there any other way for me to deal with this?
What might be another way? What do you think would be another way to deal with it?
To concentrate, to find the space of quiet, but I know when, of course, when you ask me this, I know that it's best just to leave it. It's best just to let it flow, and it will go away.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a long time.
Well, it may take a long time for us to quiet down and feel better, but it doesn't take a long time for us to be in the now. And the instant you're in the now, what I'm finding, I'm not holding any thought anymore. I'm just in the now. Kindness can come through. Even if I'm in a low mood, I can be kind to someone. I can, you never know how that kindness will express itself. But if I can tell the difference between when I'm caught up in my thinking, there's a feeling to it, and when I'm in the now. And when I'm in the now, I trust what comes to me. So it might come to me to say to the person, I just had a big reaction to something you said, and I just want to wait a second and let it pass by. Maybe that's what occurs to you. Maybe it occurs to you to just say, could you say that again in another way, please? I don't really get what you're saying here. I don't really understand what you're saying. You never know the instant we're open-minded. Even if we're still upset, the instant we're open-minded, enough wisdom comes through to help us and guide us, bring us common sense. And sometimes I just felt like when in my relationships or with my wife, I just felt like, well, I have enough sense here to minimize the damage, not to make it worse. Mm-hmm. So I might say something, and if it makes it worse for the other person, I'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to make it worse. Let's start over again, can we? Oh, geez, and you just do the best you can. And it doesn't mean you have to sit around and wait for half an hour until you feel good. You might. Maybe that's what makes sense. Maybe you'll say, can we talk about this later? I'm just not in a great space right now. I probably did that 10 million times in my family as my kids were growing up, 5 minutes of talking when I was in a really loving space was worth 3 hours of talking when I wasn't, so it actually saved time by saying, let's talk later. But there's no right way. You'll begin to find out what's helpful and what works. I do find it's helpful to realize it's normal to have a thought come into your head that creates an overwhelming feeling or a strong emotion or a strong reaction. It's normal as can be, right? But it's just a thought. And if I leave it alone, it does flow. It does keep moving. And I do get back to perspective and common sense quicker than I had ever realized. And then I have the wherewithal to not be governed by my reactive thinking. And I become more proactive rather than reactive.
That was really helpful because I just, it just occurred to me that it's actually what happens. Something occurs to me, but I have to have the courage to kind of listen to it. But it happens right there.
Yeah. You learn how to listen to that
moment where it comes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I saw something
Beautiful.
now. And thank you so much, Dicken. So nice to see you. I love you. So nice to see you. Thank you.
Love you, Kath. Yeah. You take care.
Yeah.
Thanks. We have time for another question if someone has.
Hi, Dicken.
Yes, Brad. How you doing? I didn't recognize you without your hat.
Sorry, I put it on, but
I just want to really thank you for this, what you just said here in this conversation. There's something that's really opened up about it's normal to be overcome with the emotion at the beginning
Oh yeah.
when you first get it.
Yeah, me too.
I
Yeah.
how long I've been thinking that there was something, I was doing something wrong or whatever, because it would just be so strong. And I just, yeah, so I really, really appreciate you saying that. And thank you for that, because that just was, that was a game changer.
You know where I learned a lot about that, Brad, was watching my newborn grandson. Every couple of seconds, he'd have a strong emotion of some kind or another.
Mm.
And it just flow through. No resistance, no judgment. And as what I realized is I'm still like that. I have all kinds of thoughts flow through my head. And either they flow through and I keep coming back to this open presence where I have plenty of common sense to deal with life, or I get caught up in one of those thoughts and start thinking about it, and then it gets complicated.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? We'll do one more if someone has.
Hi. Hello. I don't have
Hi.
a question, but I just feel like telling that I'm just really, really touched by what you're saying.
Mm,
It really goes, yeah, right into my heart.
yeah.
And it gives so much hope.
Yes, there is. Yes.
And yeah, it makes life so easy. So thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. That's very kind. That's very nice.
Yeah.
You know, when we hear something that's true, it does resonate in our heart. It really does. It goes right in. It goes in under our intellect and touches us in that place where all of this is true.
Yeah.
That we genuinely are in that place full of love and wisdom and creative thinking and responsiveness and beauty and soul and all that good stuff is actually true. It's actually true. So, well, thank you. Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
here's the deal. There are no psychological problems that exist in this space. They only exist when we're in our ideas about ourselves or life or people. All psychological suffering happens when people get caught up in their ideas. And when we are free of ideas, we're right back to innocence, right back to love, right back to presence, right back to the now, right back to a non-conceptual knowing that guides us through life beautifully without any thinking or ideas, where you just know what to do, you know what to say, you know when to stand up, when to sit down, when to eat food, when to sleep. When to say something to somebody and when to keep your mouth shut. Here's another way of thinking about this. Very simply, Sid Banks says every single thing that's been described as mental illness or a psychological problem is really somebody thinking that one of their thoughts is true, especially a judgmental thought. That's the only way people suffer psychologically. With understanding, you can have all kinds of reactive thoughts, but they don't mean anything if they're just flowing through. They're just thoughts. They're not meaning. I loved how you said that, Natasha, that thing about bringing together, and all of a sudden you believe a thought to be what it's about. That's a beautiful metaphor. You know, it's sort of interesting, isn't it, Natasha? Because we know that everybody we've ever met still has ups and downs in their state of mind. They still have moods. And in a low mood, our thinking naturally has more judgment in it. And that the only time any of us get into trouble psychologically is when we're in a low mood. We think that what we're thinking is true. That's it. If I didn't think it was true, it'd be a passing thought, and I'd go through it just like a baby goes through their experience, and we would be living in that psychological innocence, which just means free of judgment, free of meaning. If we're free of meaning, do we live a meaningful life? Well, I had to find that out. As that when my thinking has no meaning, I am so full of love and compassion, it's unbelievable. And to me, that's the only thing that gives our lives meaning anyways. As Sid Banks would say, the answer always, always, always is love. That's our true nature, but for the thinking we think to be true. Well, I look forward to part 2. When do we do that? Natasha?
January 25th, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think look at that. Yeah, we will announce that shortly so everybody can plan for that as well.
Okay, good. Hey, listen, if you get some questions that we didn't get to, just send Natasha or I an email.
We'll post them on the Facebook group and we'll respond in there.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you everyone for coming and listening. We look forward to chatting more with you next time, and hope to see more of you in Norway. We can't wait to be in Norway in March. We're really excited.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, absolutely.
We had to cancel last year, so this time we're really excited. Really.
So
thanks, Tor.
thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Tor.
Dicken and Natasha, and we look so much forward to having you coming here to Norway. And I put up the links now to the Facebook site as well as to the 2 events. So please take your opportunity and book your place, and we'd love to see you here in Norway.